My business, the one I poured 15 years of blood and sanity into, is finally sold. The contract is worth millions and guarantees my financial freedom forever. There's only one signature missing, my ex-husband Mark's. He knows I need this deal. He looked me in the eye and issued his ultimatum. I'll sign the sale agreement, but only if you hand over full, uncontested custody of our two children. He's blackmailing me with my own kids. I have to choose between my entire professional life, my financial future, and my fundamental right to be their mother. I can save my business, but only by giving up my children. Before we begin this impossible story, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your participation is the only thing that can guide my choice. The day the facts came through, I thought I had won my life back. 15 years. That's how long I had poured every ounce of sanity, sweat, and savings into Innovate Labs, my software development firm. I had started it in a cramped spare room, juggling conference calls with nap times, fighting for every contract. Now, the largest tech conglomerate in the region wanted to buy it, offering a multi-million-dollar deal that would guarantee not just my retirement, but my children's education and their children's financial security. The paperwork was 99% complete, signed, notarized, and ready for final execution. I remember standing in my living room, looking out at the treehouse I built for my kids, Liam, 12, and Chloe, 10, feeling a dizzying rush of pride and relief. The sacrifice had been worth it. The struggle was over. Then my corporate attorney, a man whose voice usually hummed with dry confidence, called. His tone was suddenly tight, anxious. "We have a problem, Sarah. A very serious one. The problem was Mark, my ex-husband. When Mark and I divorced 3 years ago, he fought me on everything except the custody. He was perfectly happy with the current arrangement of alternating weeks, as it suited his workaholic schedule. The financial split, however, was brutal. He was controlling and litigious, insisting on burying me in paperwork. We had a joint business ownership document dating back to a time when Innovate Labs was just a seed, a document Mark refused to let lapse even though he'd never contributed any actual work. My divorce lawyer assured me it was legally moot, as the business was primarily my post-separation asset. She was wrong. Mark's signature is mandatory, my attorney stated grimly. That clause he insisted on retaining in the original operating agreement, Clause 4B, the non-compete dissolution. It requires both parties' final authorization on any sale of company assets exceeding $500,000 for 5 years post-divorce. We missed it. He has veto power. I felt the blood drain from my face. Veto power. My entire future, the multi-million-dollar deal, the security of my children, all hinged on the goodwill of the one man dedicated to making my life miserable. The buyer, my attorney continued, his voice rising with urgency, is under a hostile takeover deadline. They gave us 72 hours to finalize the deal and receive that signature. If Mark doesn't sign by Thursday at 5 p.m., they walk away. The deal collapses entirely, and they will never offer that price again. I tried to rationalize it. Mark was a decent father in public. He was financially comfortable, funded primarily by his extremely wealthy, controlling mother, who viewed the preservation of their legacy as a divine duty. I thought he would haggle for a small, insignificant percentage, a clean exit for an old document. I called Mark immediately. He answered on the second ring, his tone annoyingly cheerful. I laid out the situation, swallowing my pride, and offered him a generous 5% of the final sale to sign the release form. He didn't laugh. He sighed, a dramatic, performative sigh that always preceded his cruelest maneuvers. "Sarah, you know how sentimental I am about Innovate Labs. 5%. That hardly compensates for the emotional pain of letting go of our original idea." I waited for the financial negotiation, prepared to offer 10, maybe even 15%. But Mark didn't want money. He wanted power. He was the immovable object, and the clock was ticking down to 0, threatening to flatten my entire professional life. I hung up the phone, knowing that the next time we spoke, the cost would be far higher than any dollar amount. I was trapped between my ambition and the black hole of my ex-husband's control. My successful business was about to become the instrument of my own devastating sacrifice. I arranged to meet Mark at his lawyer's office the next morning, a sterile, neutral battlefield where I thought the conversation would remain strictly professional. I was wrong. The moment the lawyer stepped out, leaving us alone with the massive contract lying between us, Mark's polite veneer dissolved, and his face took on a cold, predatory intensity one hadn't seen since the worst days of our divorce. "So, the great entrepreneur Sarah finally needs my signature," he said, tapping the contract with a casual arrogance. "This is worth millions, isn't it? Enough to make you fully independent, enough to ensure you never have to work another day in your life." "It secures the children's future, Mark," I corrected, trying to keep my voice steady. "It secures their college funds and their trust funds. This is for Liam and Chloe." Mark smiled, a chilling, calculated gesture devoid of warmth. "Exactly. The children. That's what we need to talk about, Sarah. The terms of my signature are non-negotiable, and they have nothing to do with money." My stomach clenched. I knew he wouldn't ask for a percentage. I was prepared for stock options or even a lifetime consultancy fee. I wasn't prepared for the words that came next. "I will sign the document," he stated, leaning back, the picture of casual control. "But you will immediately waive your right to joint custody. I get full, sole, uncontested physical and legal custody of Liam and Chloe. You get supervised visitation every third weekend and alternating holidays. Nothing more." The room spun. I didn't register the leather furniture or the lawyer's framed degrees. I only heard the total destruction of my world. "You're insane," I whispered, the rage finally overriding the fear. "You can't be serious. You barely see them as it is. They need me. You know that." Mark's eyes narrowed. "I am serious, Sarah. It's the price of your freedom. You sign the waiver, I sign the contract. The deal goes through, you get your millions, and you can live your independent CEO life without the inconvenience of being a full-time mother. If you don't sign the waiver, the contract expires in 72 hours. You get nothing. No money, no security, and your business dies." He stood up, circling the table slowly, driving home the terrifying reality. "The court will see that you chose a corporation over your children, Sarah. I will argue that your 15 years of working 18-hour days proves you value your ambition more than your children's stability. When I testify, I will state, truthfully, that you chose to let a multi-million-dollar deal collapse rather than give up one weekend of parenting time. The court will see that as a devastating indictment of your priorities. They will call you financially desperate and an unfit mother obsessed with a failed business." I struggled to process the cruelty. He wasn't just demanding custody. He was using the multi-million-dollar contract, the very symbol of my hard work, as a weapon against my motherhood. He was forcing me to sign a confession of my inadequacy as a mother, or face ruin, and have the court force the custody change anyway. "Why, Mark?" I pleaded, grabbing the edge of the table. "You don't want them. They spend half their time with the nanny. You're doing this just to hurt me." "It's business, Sarah," he replied, a chillingly calm delivery. "You want to play the capitalist, so play the game. The terms are simple. Your money or your children. The 72-hour clock is running. Choose your future." I watched him walk out, leaving me alone with the contract. The price of my professional success was the abandonment of my children. I was trapped in a moral vice. If I signed the papers, I would become the richest woman in the state who only saw her children 3 times a month. If I refused to sign, I would be left with a failing business, and the constant stress of knowing my children's future financial security was gone forever. My life savings had become the most painful blackmail weapon imaginable. I was facing the ultimate choice. Is my freedom and financial power worth sacrificing my right to raise Liam and Chloe? The agony is instant and absolute. I spent the rest of that afternoon alone in the conference room, not crying, but staring at the custody waiver. I had to understand the why. Mark didn't love the children enough to raise them full time. He loved control, but there was a deeper cruelty at play. I called the only person who knew Mark's motivations better than he did, his sister, Eleanor. She despised Mark's arrogance but remained tethered to the family's financial engine. His mother, the formidable matriarch. Eleanor, he wants full custody, I whispered into the phone, barely able to form the words. He's selling the children for my signature. Eleanor didn't sound surprised. She sounded resigned. It's mother, she stated flatly. She's doing it again. She's not doing it for Mark. She's doing it for the legacy. Eleanor explained the core of the Vance family dynamic. Mark's mother, who controlled the vast majority of the family trust and Mark's allowance, was fixated on social perception. The family's primary philanthropic effort was launching a new, prestigious private academy dedicated to shaping the next generation of leadership. She's hosting the inaugural donor gala next month, Eleanor revealed. The problem? She and Mark look weak. Mark is a divorced father with shared custody. She believes shared custody implies he's an unreliable part-time father, undermining the family's image as the sole, reliable custodians of the next generation. She needs him to be the uncontested, sole parent to stand on that stage and represent the family's commitment to youth leadership. I felt sick. She's forcing him to take my children, so he can look better at a charity gala? She's paying him to, Eleanor corrected. She promised him the final, massive chunk of the trust, the money Mark needs to buy that vineyard he's always wanted, if he secures sole custody by the gala date. Mark is selling the children for a vineyard. He doesn't want the children. He wants the money that only sole custody can unlock. This revelation twisted the ethical knot tighter. Mark wasn't driven by parental love. He was driven by pure, transactional greed and his mother's controlling vanity. This was corporate-level blackmail using my children as collateral. Eleanor added the final, devastating layer. Sarah, you know Mark. He can't handle the kids full-time. If he gets sole custody, he's not raising them, mother's nanny. Petra is loyal to Mark's mother, but she's emotionally sterile and she treats Liam and Chloe like line items. They'll be raised in that sterile mansion, completely neglected by their father, simply to uphold the Vance family's public image. It will be emotional abandonment paid for in trust funds. I was now facing two catastrophic outcomes rooted in the same greed. If I sign, Choice AI gained financial freedom, securing the children's future inheritance. But I hand Liam and Chloe over to a father who will immediately outsource their daily care to an emotionally detached nanny for years, all for a publicity stunt. I sell my right to parent for a fortune, and they suffer years of emotional neglect. If I refuse, Choice BI saved them from emotional abandonment by keeping joint custody. But I forfeit the multi-million-dollar deal, bankrupting Innovate Labs entirely. This would force me back into years of brutal, stressful work just to maintain basic solvency, ultimately robbing the children of the secure financial future the sale promised. Mark's greed had engineered a trap where either choice resulted in a profound, irreversible loss for Liam and Chloe, a loss of their mother's presence or a loss of their financial future. The blackmail was no longer just against me. It was against the well-being of my own children. I had 72 hours to decide which form of abandonment was the lesser evil. The realization of the true motive, the vineyard, the society gala, the sterile mansion, didn't simplify the choice. It intensified the moral agony. Mark wasn't just being selfish. He was engaging in high-level transactional abuse, and the children were his currency. I had 72 hours remaining, and the clock was ticking toward an irreversible deadline. I locked myself in my office, the signed waiver and the sale contract lying side by side on my desk, symbolizing the two mutually destructive futures. I spent hours running the variables, trying to find the ethical symmetry that could justify one action over the other. The dilemma was agonizingly simple, yet utterly unsolvable. On one side, I had the power of the fortune, choice A, sign the waiver. This path promised absolute financial stability for my family. The sale price meant Liam and Chloe would never have to worry about money. Their college, their homes, their futures, all secured by my signature. This was the ultimate maternal achievement, sacrificing myself now to guarantee their financial safety forever. However, the cost was the most painful thing a mother could endure: physical and emotional abandonment. I would hand them over to a father who doesn't parent and a controlling grandmother who needs them for decoration. They would be raised by the emotionally sterile nanny, Petra, feeling profoundly unloved and unwanted by the one person who fought for them, me, the mother who chose money over their daily presence. I would become the richest mother in the state, but one forced to live with the knowledge that I signed away my right to teach them, hug them, and guide them through their crucial teenage years. On the other side, I had the power of motherhood, choice B, refuse to sign. This path meant destroying the sale contract entirely. I would save Liam and Chloe from the sterile, emotionally distant life dictated by their grandmother's society demands. I would be there for every scraped knee, every school play, every difficult teenage conversation. I would secure their present emotional health and affirm my commitment as their fierce, full-time parent. However, the financial consequence was immediate and catastrophic. Innovate Labs would collapse. The multi-million-dollar security blanket would vanish, forcing me back into the brutal stress of rebuilding a company from scratch. I would condemn the children to a life where their mother is constantly stressed, overworked, and financially precarious, living paycheck to maintain custody. I would save their emotional present, but I would risk their long-term financial security and inheritance. The cruelty of Mark's blackmail was that both outcomes led to a catastrophic loss for the children. If I chose the money, they would be emotionally neglected and resentful of their abandonment. If I chose custody, they would be stressed by our financial struggles and resentful that I sacrificed their inheritance. There was no victory, only varying degrees of irreversible pain. I stood up and walked to the window, watching Liam and Chloe play catch in the yard below, their innocent laughter echoing the impossible stakes. I looked at the custody waiver on my desk, an ugly, black and white contract defining the price of a child's soul. I had always been an entrepreneur, a problem solver, a woman who could always find a path to victory. But Mark's malicious creativity had created a perfect moral vice, designed to crush my maternal instinct and financial ambition simultaneously. I realized I was paralyzed. I could not, in good conscience, condemn my children to emotional distance, nor could I condemn them to financial insecurity. My heart was utterly broken by the realization that my unconditional love for them had been weaponized. The 72-hour deadline was now a relentless, deafening countdown. I was forced to choose between the integrity of my future and the necessity of their presence. The weight of this judgment, the ultimate definition of what kind of mother I was, is too heavy for one woman to bear alone. I needed the world to look at this devastating bargain and tell me, is financial freedom worth sacrificing my right to be their mother? I realized I couldn't just trust Mark's timeline. I needed confirmation of the absolute, non-negotiable nature of the sale deadline. If there was a week of wiggle room, if the buyer was simply bluffing, the entire moral equation changed. My corporate lawyer, Mr. Hayes, confirmed my deepest fear. There was no wiggle room. I called Mr. Hayes back, my voice tight with a cold desperation that had replaced tears. Mark is demanding full custody to sign. I need to know beyond a shadow of a doubt if this 72-hour deadline is firm. Can we get an extension? Can we threaten legal action against Mark to force the signature? Mr. Hayes' sigh on the other end was heavy with professional defeat. Sarah, the buyer, he named the massive conglomerate, they are under extreme pressure. This is a hostile takeover, and Innovate Labs is the final piece of the puzzle. They are restructuring their entire Asian Pacific division on this acquisition. If they miss the closing window, their internal contract defaults. They won't just walk away. They are legally mandated to find another solution immediately. He elaborated on the devastating fragility of my deal. They've already extended the deadline, once due to Mark's initial stonewalling. They gave us the 72 hours as a final, irrevocable window. If Mark's signature is not on the document by Thursday at 5 p.m., the deal is dead. Permanently. The buyer's counsel has already prepared the termination documents. I felt the last vestige of my negotiating power vaporize. This wasn't a bluff. It was a hard, capitalist certainty. If I chose motherhood, choice B, and refused to sign, the financial fallout was not just the loss of the multi-million-dollar payout. It was the total, immediate bankruptcy of Innovate Labs. What about the business itself, Mr. Hayes? I asked, trying to remain clinical. Can I pivot? Can I find another buyer? Can I keep the doors open? Innovate Labs is not liquid, Sarah. You've been paying the legal fees for the divorce and the operational costs out of pocket for 6 months, expecting this payout. Your accounts are thin. If the sale collapses, you lose the $500,000 earnest money you promised the buyer if the deal failed on your end. That obligation, plus the severance packages you promised your key employees, means Innovate Labs will enter insolvency by the end of next week. You will have to declare bankruptcy. The assets, the valuable IP and software, will be sold off piecemeal for pennies on the dollar. The reality was crushing. Refusing Mark's blackmail wasn't a sustainable act of defiance. It was an act of financial suicide that left my children entirely exposed. If I fought Mark in court for custody, as he threatened in the ultimatum, I would do so as a financially ruined, bankrupt, high-stress mother who just let a multi-million-dollar fortune slip through her fingers. Mark, the wealthy father, would parade the court records showing my financial failure and my desperate, failed ambition. Mr. Hayes' final warning was the true legal trap. Mark's custody maneuver, while cruel, is brilliant. If you refuse the deal, he will use your immediate financial bankruptcy and job loss as irrefutable evidence that you are unfit to maintain the lifestyle and stability required for the children. He will win sole custody anyway, and you will have sacrificed your wealth for nothing. I hung up the phone, the cold truth settling over me. Mark had calculated the move perfectly. He had weaponized the deadline, weaponized my business success, and weaponized my inevitable financial failure. I could not save the business and keep my kids. I could not save my kids and maintain my solvency. The price of motherhood was not just high. It was total and absolute self-immolation. The only path to my children's financial security was the ultimate parental sacrifice. The stage was set for the deepest, most horrifying betrayal a mother could commit. I had been so consumed by the legal and financial reality of Mark's ultimatum, I hadn't truly faced the emotional reality for my children. Mark claimed the children would be fine, thriving in his sterile mansion with Petra, the nanny. I needed to know the truth of the emotional cost before I signed their future away. I waited until Liam and Chloe returned from their final exchange day at Mark's house. They walked in the door not with excitement, but with a weary resignation that crushed me. Liam, my 12-year-old, dumped his expensive private school backpack onto the floor and immediately went to the window, staring out. Chloe, 10, sat silently on the sofa, scrolling listlessly through her iPad. They were exhausted, not from the commute, but from the emotional vacuum of their father's house. I sat beside Chloe and gently asked her about their week. "Did you have a good time at Dad's, sweetie? Did you and Liam get to go swimming?" Chloe's response was small, quiet, and devastating. "We went swimming once. With Petra. She just times us and makes sure we don't splash the deck. Dad wasn't there. He was at the club talking about the gala." "Is Petra nice?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Chloe shrugged, her eyes never leaving the screen. "She's efficient. She makes us eat the green stuff and finishes our homework before Dad gets home, so he can see we're well managed. She doesn't hug very well." My heart broke. Mark didn't parent, he delegated. Petra was an employee. not a mother figure, and she treated my children like line items on a quarterly report. This confirmed Eleanor's warning. If I signed that waiver, my children would be raised in an environment of emotional sterility, valued only for their role in their grandmother's social legacy. I turned to Liam, the quieter, more observant one. Liam, I'm worried about you. You seem down. What's wrong? Liam sighed, a profound, adult sound that was painful to hear. He finally looked at me, and the resentment and confusion in his eyes were directed not at his father, but at the structure of their life. Dad told me I have to start looking at his life seriously, Liam whispered. He said I need to understand that the private academy and the trust fund are about my future. He spends all our time talking about the gala, telling me I have to behave perfectly for Grandma Vance, or he'll lose the money. It's all about the money, Mom. He said your work is fine, but his legacy is secure. The twist was agonizing. Mark was using the children's time with him to actively teach them that money and legacy were the only things that mattered, and that their mother's modest, passionate business was a fragile failure. He was poisoning their values to secure his wealth. Liam's voice dropped even lower. Mom, if you ever had to choose between us and your business, which one would you choose? The question was the final, devastating dagger. Liam was voicing the exact dilemma Mark had forced upon me. He was asking for a fundamental assurance that no mother should ever have to give. I couldn't answer him. I pulled both children close, holding them tightly, realizing that my mere possession of the sale contract had already damaged them. They were aware of the financial pressure, and they were aware of their father's cold, transactional view of their lives. If I chose choice A, sign the waiver, I secure their financial safety, but I sentence them to years of deep emotional neglect under Petra, who treats them like prestige objects. My absence will confirm to Liam that I chose the money, cementing his father's cruel lie about my priorities. If I chose choice B, refused the deal, I saved them from the emotional vacuum of Mark's house, guaranteeing my presence. But I condemn them to watching their mother struggle desperately in a bankrupt business, fighting perpetual stress, and robbing them of the secure inheritance that Mark already holds over their heads. The agony was complete. The choice was between their long-term financial health and their immediate emotional survival, and the deadline was less than 48 hours away. Mark's cruelty had worked perfectly. I was trapped, unable to choose which form of irreversible damage I was willing to inflict on the two most important people in my life. The 48-hour countdown was now a living, breathing monster, and Mark's final, calculated move was the most devastating. I called my divorce attorney, Ms. Delgado, hoping there was a loophole in Mark's custody demand, some way to force his hand without signing the document. Ms. Delgado, Mark is leveraging the business sale against custody. He says if I refuse to sign, he'll let the deal collapse and then use my resulting bankruptcy to prove I'm an unfit, high-risk mother, I explained, my voice strained. Ms. Delgado's response confirmed the absolute cruelty of Mark's strategy. He's not bluffing, Sarah. His legal position is flawless. We cannot fight him on custody right now. Here's the trap, and it's absolute. If you choose to refuse the deal, choice B, you will lose custody anyway. I felt the last pillar of my hope crumble. Why? Why, when I fought for them? Because of the optics, Sarah. The court system prioritizes stability and financial safety. If the Innovate Lab sale collapses, you are immediately insolvent. Mark, the wealthy father, will walk into court with documents showing that you sacrificed a multi-million-dollar fortune out of emotional instability, that you preferred to bankrupt your company and plunge your children into poverty rather than compromise a small fraction of your parenting time. She continued, the sound of a stapler clicking on her end emphasizing the cold finality of her analysis. Mark's lawyer will argue that you have proved his original assertion, that you are an unstable entrepreneur who views her business as a personal obsession. He will present evidence that you chose emotional spite over financial responsibility. The judge will see that Mark, the stable, wealthy father, offers the children a guaranteed, secure lifestyle, and inheritance, while you offer chaos and the imminent loss of their home. The full horror of Mark's legal trap settled over me. I had no choice that guaranteed custody. If I sign, choice A, I willingly hand the children over to Mark's sole custody, securing the money and their inheritance, but confirming my betrayal in their eyes. If I refuse, choice B, the sale collapses. Innovate Labs goes bankrupt, and Mark uses my resulting financial devastation to win sole custody in court. I sacrifice the multi-million-dollar fortune and still lose my children. Mark had engineered the situation so that my act of greatest maternal love, refusing the money to keep my children, would be interpreted by the legal system as my ultimate failure as a provider, ensuring I lost them anyway. I was trapped between two forms of devastating abandonment, both leading to the children living with Mark. You're telling me there is no possible choice that saves both my business and my full custody rights? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. None, Ms. Delgado confirmed gently. Mark has forced you into an impossible binary. You either sign the waiver now, secure the children's wealth, choice A, and accept the shame of supervised visitation, or you refuse, lose everything, and have the court force the exact same outcome, choice B, but without the financial security. The cost of preserving your current relationship with them is now absolute ruin for all three of you. I hung up, the phone feeling heavy and cold. The illusion of a moral choice was gone. Mark hadn't offered a choice between money and children. He had offered a choice between a catastrophic loss with financial ruin, refusing, and a catastrophic loss with guaranteed security, signing. I stood alone in my office, realizing the only decision left was determining which type of ruin the children deserved, poverty and stress, or wealth and emotional neglect. My entire future was reduced to a final, devastating, and unavoidable sacrifice. The knowledge imparted by Ms. Delgado was a death blow. Mark hadn't offered a choice between two evils. He had offered a choice between total, pointless ruin or managed, guaranteed disaster. I had been fighting to keep my children, but the law had already determined the outcome. I walked into the kitchen, the signed waiver and the business contract feeling like literal chains. I had fought Mark's financial greed for years, only to realize that his ultimate victory was based on the structural cruelty of the court system. They value wealth and stability over emotional presence. Liam's innocent question, Mom, if you had to choose between us and your business, was now screaming in my head, demanding an answer that neither wealth nor love could justify. I reviewed the final, excruciating binary for the last time. Choice A, sign the waiver, the path of the mercenary. I choose the multi-million-dollar fortune. I secure their trust funds, their private education, and their long-term financial freedom. But I knowingly confirm their growing belief that I chose money over them. I hand them over to Petra, the emotionless nanny, for the next 6 years, watching them become decorative pieces in their grandmother's society game. My victory is of fortune, and my life is defined by the shame of signing away my maternal role. I condemn them to the emotional abandonment of wealth. Choice B, refuse to sign the path of the martyr. I choose to fight for the final 48 hours. I let the sale collapse. Innovate Labs goes bankrupt. I lose the fortune, lose my job, lose the money, and then Mark walks into court with the bankruptcy papers to prove I'm an unstable, financially reckless parent. The court grants him sole custody anyway. I lose everything, the fortune, the business, and the children. This is the only path that yields absolute, total loss for me and ultimately for the children who are dragged through years of legal and financial chaos for nothing. The weight of this decision was the crushing understanding that motherhood cannot survive Mark's legal maneuver. My sacrifice would be meaningless. I was forced to choose between being a wealthy absentee mother, choice A, and a broke, irrelevant absentee mother, choice B. The agony of choice A, the betrayal of signing the document, was balanced by the responsibility of securing their financial life raft. I might lose their love now, but I guarantee their futures. The agony of choice B, the refusal, was the ultimate defeat, proving Mark right and rendering my decade and a half of entrepreneurship worthless, with the same result. Mark wins custody. I grabbed the waiver and the pen, the sweat cooling on my palms. I was prepared to sign the document, prepared to become the villain in my children's story, just to guarantee they had the financial armor to survive the years of neglect that Mark's mother would inflict on them. I was about to commit the profound, necessary betrayal. But then I thought of Liam's eyes and his direct, innocent question, which would you choose? If I signed, Liam would know, forever, that I chose the money. If I refused, he would know I fought for him until the very end, even if I was ruined. I realized that my true purpose here was not legal victory, but moral clarity. I am trapped. I am broken. I cannot make a choice that will not lead to devastating consequences for the children I love more than life itself. I cannot ask them to carry the burden of financial ruin, nor can I ask them to carry the burden of my deliberate abandonment. The decision is too dark, too final, and too catastrophic for a single person to bear. I stood up, pushing the waiver away. The clock showed the deadline was just hours away. I realized my only option was to appeal to the highest court, the court of human conscience, and let the collective weight of the world assume the burden Mark had maliciously placed on me. I gathered the legal documents and the custody waiver, ready to present this case to the only jury that matters. I am asking you to judge. Which form of abandonment is the lesser evil? The clock is closing in on the 5 p.m. deadline, and the decision is not just imminent, but inevitable. I stand here, holding the signed documents that represent the total destruction of my life as a full-time mother, ready to present my case to the world. I have exhausted my options, exhausted my strength, and exhausted the law. Now, the final judgment rests with you. I am pleading with you to look at the evidence that Mark, my ex-husband, has meticulously created a legal trap so cruel that my only path to saving my children is to betray them. I am the mother who must choose which type of devastating ruin to inflict upon her own flesh and blood. Look at the devastating calculus that Mark engineered. He knew that if I refused to sign choice B, the business would fail and my financial ruin would be used in court to prove I was unfit. He knew the judge would prioritize his wealth and stability over my passionate but precarious life. This path is not defiance. It is total, pointless self-immolation. It yields the same result. Mark gets the children, but guarantees they enter his custody with a financially ruined mother who sacrificed everything for nothing. My ultimate defeat validates his cruel assessment of my ambition. He knew that if I signed the papers, choice A, I would be the perpetrator of the emotional abandonment. But by securing the fortune, I at least give Liam and Chloe the financial armor to withstand the emotional neglect they will suffer in his sterile, nanny-run mansion. My betrayal is done for a purpose, their future safety. I give them the trust funds, the security, and the peace of mind I worked 15 years to earn. The question is, which loss is the most responsible choice for their well-being? Is it better for the children to have a broke, unstable, but emotionally present mother for a short time before losing custody, who fought to the end, or a wealthy, stable, but emotionally absent mother who signed the papers to secure their financial freedom? I am not asking for sympathy. I am asking for clarity. I need you to tell me which ethical violation, the betrayal of my maternal presence or the betrayal of my family's financial security, is the one that offers the children the best chance at a functioning life. I am paralyzed because I know that if I choose B, Liam will remember that I chose emotional defiance over his college fund. If I choose A, Chloe will remember that I chose money over her goodnight hug. Both choices are permanent wounds. I am handing over the signed waiver and the contract, allowing the world to cast the final, necessary judgment. I will not move until I receive the collective verdict. I have done my duty to tell the truth. Now, you must fulfill yours to judge. I am ready for the ultimate verdict. I promise to follow the outcome, no matter how devastating the fallout may be, and I will detail the immediate, crushing consequences in the follow-up video. What I should do. The verdict next week. Vote A. Sign the deal, choose financial security, and accept emotional abandonment. Vote B. Refuse the deal, choose to fight for custody, accepting total financial and legal ruin. Thank you for being my judge. The fate of my children is now in your hands. The clock is now less than an hour from 5 p.m. The final hour of my motherhood, as I have always known it, is upon me. I have looked at the waiver, at the multi-million-dollar contract, and at the photo of my children, and I still cannot make the final move. The choice between their financial future and their emotional present is the most horrifying calculus I have ever faced, and the legal trap ensures there is no escaping the loss of my custody rights either way. I am appealing to you, the silent jury of compassion and judgment, for the definitive verdict that will allow me to act. I have placed the full weight of my shattered heart and my ruined future into these two options, which represent the only paths forward. Option A. The sacrifice of presence. Vote A. Financial security. The action. I sign the custody waiver and Mark's contract. The result. Liam and Chloe's financial security is guaranteed through their trust funds and inheritance. I retain supervised visitation, securing their financial stability at the expense of my maternal presence. The cost. I become the mother who willingly signed away her children, confirming Mark's lie that I chose money over them. They will suffer years of emotional sterility under Petra's care, and I will be haunted by the knowledge that I betrayed their innocence for a fortune. Option B. The sacrifice of security. Vote B. Fight for motherhood. The action. I refuse to sign the contract, allowing the 5 p.m. deadline to pass. The result. I temporarily fight to keep joint custody, affirming my absolute maternal commitment. However, Innovate Labs instantly files for bankruptcy. I lose the fortune, lose my job, and lose the ensuing custody battle when Mark presents my financial ruin to the judge. The cost. I inflict total, pointless ruin on all three of us. The children lose their financial inheritance and still lose me to Mark's custody, having witnessed years of their mother's desperate, fruitless struggle and bankruptcy. This option makes my sacrifice meaningless. There is no honorable path left. Mark designed this to force me to commit the lesser evil. I must now determine, through your collective wisdom, which form of abandonment is the most responsible choice for the emotional and physical survival of my children. I have spent 15 years building a future for them. I cannot spend the last hour destroying it based on pure, self-serving emotion. I must act for them. The time for argument is over. I need you to assume the role of the judge, the moral arbitrator, and the jury. Your vote is the final, crushing judgment. I am ready for the ultimate verdict. I promise to follow the outcome, no matter how devastating the fallout may be, and I will detail the immediate, crushing consequences in the follow-up video. What I should do. The verdict next week. Choose the path of less destruction. Vote A. Sign the deal, choose the financial armor, and accept supervised visitation. Vote B. Refuse the deal, choose to fight for custody, accepting total personal and financial ruin. Thank you for being my judge. The fate of my children is now in your hands.